The text came on a Thursday evening while I was reviewing first quarter numbers in my home office. Maya, Easter brunch is family only this year. Ethan's parents are flying in from Connecticut, and his managing director may stop by. Having you there would create questions. You understand. I stared at it for a few seconds, then typed back exactly 3 words. No explanation needed. My phone buzzed almost immediately. Your sister is just trying to keep things comfortable, my mother wrote. It's probably for the best, sweetheart. You know how finance people are. A minute later, my father added, Your mother and I appreciate your maturity. We'll save you some ham. I set my phone face down and reopened the acquisition deck on my screen. The company buying mine, Northbridge Capital, had offered $340 million in cash for a majority stake in my fintech business. We were 6 weeks from closing. Their managing director, Daniel Mercer, was flying in Monday morning for final diligence. My family knew I worked in tech. They knew I had started some payment software thing years ago. That was about the extent of their curiosity. My sister Claire had always been the celebrated one. Cornell, consulting, sharp wardrobe, sharper opinions. She made good money and carried it like a crown. When she got engaged to Ethan Park, a Goldman Sachs vice president with a Wharton MBA and wealthy parents, the family group chat had practically combusted with praise. I sent a polite congratulations. She messaged me privately afterward. Thanks. I know this must be hard to watch, but you'll find someone eventually. At 31, single, with a state school math degree and no interest in performing success for an audience, I suppose I looked underwhelming from the outside. What Claire did not know was that 3 months earlier, the Wall Street Journal had profiled me in a feature on founders under 35. Forbes had ranked my company among the fastest-growing private firms in fintech. We processed billions in payments a year for thousands of small businesses. I had built all of it quietly. That was not humility, it was self-preservation. When you grow up as the sibling people overlook, you learn that silence can be a form of freedom. So, on Easter Sunday, instead of driving to Westchester to be politely excluded in person, I had brunch alone at a small French place in Brooklyn. I ordered eggs Benedict, read the paper, and enjoyed the kind of peace that comes from not needing to audition for anybody's approval. Around 2 in the afternoon, Claire sent a photo. My parents stood smiling beside her and Ethan, along with an older couple I assumed were Ethan's parents. Champagne flutes raised, spring flowers everywhere. My mother's best china laid out like a magazine spread. Wish you were here, she wrote. Saved you a plate. I zoomed in on Ethan. Relaxed smile, good suit, even for brunch. The posture of a man who had moved through life assuming doors would open for him. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened Monday's schedule. 9 a.m. Northbridge arrival. 9:30 financial review. 10:30 product demo. 11:30 diligence. Q&A. 1 p.m. working lunch. 2:30 terms discussion with Daniel Mercer. I had researched Mercer thoroughly. MIT, Harvard MBA, 3 decades in finance, former Goldman Sachs partner before leaving to launch Northbridge. Before his departure, he had run Goldman's technology banking group, which meant Ethan almost certainly knew him, possibly had worked under him, definitely knew the name. By the time I finished my coffee, I was smiling. Monday was going to be interesting. The next morning was cold and clear. I wore a charcoal suit, red heels, and my usual armor, composure. My driver dropped me at headquarters just after 8. Our office took up 3 floors in a renovated Soho building with exposed brick, steel beams, and floor-to-ceiling windows. We had designed it to feel serious without being flashy. My executive team was already there, moving through final checks. Northbridge confirmed for 9 sharp, my CFO said. Mercer is bringing legal, diligence, and their operating lead. Perfect, I said. The conference room looked exactly the way I wanted it to. Glass table, leather chairs, coffee laid out properly, screens ready. Behind my seat hung framed press coverage, TechCrunch, Business Insider, Forbes, and the largest piece of all, the journal profile. Full-page photo of me in that same room, arms folded, smiling beneath the headline about how I had built a company valued at nearly $400 million in 5 years. The name under the headline was Maya Warren. My family still knew me as Maya Park. I had changed my last name legally at 25, taking my grandmother's maiden name. Family reasons, cleaner boundaries, easier breathing. At 8:55, reception called. "Miss Warren, Northbridge is here." I met them at the elevator. Daniel Mercer stepped out first, silver-haired, perfectly composed, the kind of man who entered a room and instantly altered its temperature. "Miss Warren," he said, shaking my hand, "thank you for having us." "Mr. Mercer, welcome." For the next several hours, my team and I walked them through everything. Revenue growth, margins, retention, infrastructure, customer expansion, European licensing. Mercer asked sharp, disciplined questions. He caught weak language immediately. He missed nothing. That was reassuring. I preferred dealing with people who actually knew what excellence looked like. At lunch, the tone shifted. Less evaluation, more conversation. "You bootstrapped longer than most founders would have," Mercer said. "I wanted control," I told him. "I was building a business, not chasing applause." He gave me a thoughtful look. "That's obvious." At 2:30, after his team stepped out to take calls, he asked if we could speak privately. Once the door closed, he leaned back and studied me for a moment. "Maya, you've built something exceptional. We came prepared to stay at $340 million, but after today, I'm recommending we increase to $385, all cash. 45-day close." I kept my face calm, though my pulse jumped. "That's generous." "You earned it," he said. Then his eyes flicked to the journal profile. "The article mentioned you changed your name years ago. Was there a particular reason?" I could have deflected. I usually did. But something in his voice told me he was not asking blindly. "Family reasons," I said. "I wanted to build something outside their expectations." He nodded slowly, then pulled out his phone. "This may sound odd, but do you have a sister named Claire?" My pulse sharpened. "I do." "Interesting." He set the phone down. "She's engaged to a former analyst of mine, Ethan Park. My wife and I saw them yesterday at Easter brunch." The room did not move, but something inside me did. "Small world," I said. "Very." His expression was unreadable now. "Ethan spent a surprising amount of time explaining your future in-laws' family dynamics. He said Claire was the accomplished one. Said her sister worked at a small tech company, was still trying to find her footing, probably made $60,000 or $70,000 a year. His phrase, not mine." Mercer paused. He said, "It's sweet that she's trying, but some people aren't built for high-level business." I didn't speak. "And then," he said mildly, "I arrived here this morning and spent the day negotiating a $385 million transaction with that same sister." I folded my hands in my lap so he wouldn't see them tighten. "He doesn't know," I said. "Clearly." He watched me for another second, then gave a short laugh of disbelief. "So the question is why?" "Because my family sees what they need to see," I said. "Claire needed to be the successful one. I didn't need to challenge that." "So you built a near $500 million company in silence. Success doesn't require an audience." He smiled then, genuinely delighted. "No, but sometimes the audience earns the show." We finalized terms 43 days later. Northbridge acquired 60% for $385 million in cash. I retained 40% and stayed on as CEO. The press release went live on a Tuesday morning. By 6 a.m., business media had picked it up. By 8, my phone was lighting up with calls from numbers I knew and numbers I didn't. At 9:47, my assistant buzzed my office. "There's an Ethan Park here to see you. No appointment. Says it's urgent." "Send him up." He looked good in the way men like Ethan always look good, but panic had drained the polish out of him. When he stepped into my office, he stopped just inside the door and stared. "You're Maya Warren," he said. "I am. Claire's sister is Maya Park. Also me." His eyes swept the office, the skyline, the framed articles, the Bloomberg terminal on my desk. "You're the founder?" Yes. He exhaled like the room had knocked the air out of him. Daniel called me this morning, he said. Asked whether I knew my fiancé's sister had just closed one of the biggest fintech deals of the quarter. Asked whether I also knew that I'd spent Easter brunch dismissing her as some well-meaning amateur. I said nothing. You let me say those things. I never lied about what I do. You never corrected anyone. No one asked. He opened his mouth, then shut it again. Claire knew I ran a fintech company, I said. She never asked the name, never asked about revenue, clients, funding, or growth. She heard payments and decided I was entry-level somewhere because that was the version of me she preferred. He rubbed a hand over his face. Daniel thinks this is hilarious. Your concern seems to be your professional embarrassment. His jaw tightened because we both knew that was true. Claire is losing it, he said. Your parents saw the coverage. They thought it was another Maya Warren until they saw your photo. I turned toward the window. Do you know why I stayed quiet? Because I did not want my life to become a family referendum. I built this company because I'm good at what I do, not because I needed my parents to suddenly care. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Daniel wants us all at dinner Friday. Him, his wife, you, me, Claire. That sounds less like dinner and more like theater. He says it's about family dynamics. No, I said. It's about him wanting front row seats. He almost smiled, despite himself. Will you come? I thought of Easter brunch, of the message, of the ham they plan to save me like charity. Yes, I said, I'll come. Friday night, I wore black, minimal jewelry, and the Cartier watch I had bought the day my company crossed $100 million in revenue. Daniel and his wife were already seated when I arrived. She was elegant and warm in a way that made his bluntness feel less brutal by contrast. Claire and Ethan came a few minutes later. Claire had clearly done her research. I could see it all over her face the moment she looked at me. She had read the articles, seen the numbers, and realized that while she had been narrating me to other people as a cautionary tale, I had been building an empire. She kissed the air beside my cheek. You look successful, she said. Thank you, I said. You look lovely. Dinner began with surface conversation. Work, travel, the restaurant, the wine. Claire kept glancing at me the way people glance at a stranger wearing someone they thought they knew. Eventually, Daniel leaned back and smiled. Claire, Ethan says you work in strategic consulting. I do, she said quickly, then launched into a polished summary of client portfolios, operational redesigns, and promotion tracks. When she finished, Daniel turned to me. Maya, tell Claire about your quarter. I think she'd appreciate the scale. Claire froze before I said a word. Q1 revenue was $127 million, I said. We processed $2.4 billion in volume, added 840 new clients. EBITDA margin held at 34%. The silence that followed was surgical. Daniel sipped his wine. Outstanding quarter, he said. Then he looked pleasantly at Claire. Your sister built something extraordinary. Michael mentioned the two of you are close. Claire's smile trembled. We're family. Of course. Rachel mentioned she couldn't attend Easter because the gathering was intimate. Ethan also said a managing director might drop by. He touched his chest lightly. That was me. No one spoke. Daniel continued in the same conversational tone. What fascinates me is not that Maya kept her success private. It's that none of you ever seemed curious enough to discover it. Claire's face went pink, then white. She never told us, she said. Daniel's eyes flicked toward her. Did you ask? That landed harder than anything else. I set down my fork. Daniel, I said quietly. That's enough. But his wife touched my hand gently. What he means, she said, is that you deserve to be seen. I looked across the table at my sister. For the first time in my life, Claire did not look superior or annoyed or defensive. She looked broken open. I'm sorry, I said. Her eyes widened. You're sorry? Yes. I let you keep believing you were ahead of me because it felt easier than correcting you. That wasn't kindness. It was avoidance. Tears gathered in her eyes. I told people you were struggling. I know. I told you not to come because you'd be awkward. I know. Why didn't you say anything? Because I was tired, I thought. Because I did not want my life filtered through your insecurity. Because my peace mattered more than your opinion. Instead, I said, because proving myself to you was never the point. She cried quietly then, not dramatically, not for effect. Just the exhausted tears of someone realizing she had built part of her identity on a lie she told herself. You're not better than me, I said. You're just not the measure of me. That seemed to settle somewhere deep inside her. By dessert, the room had changed, not healed. Families don't heal over sea bass and expensive wine, but the performance had ended. Claire asked real questions about my company. I answered them. Ethan apologized without dressing it up. Daniel looked entirely too pleased with himself. 3 months later, our European expansion launched on schedule. Claire came to the celebration dinner. She brought me a framed Easter photo with me, edited into the empty side of the table. Revisionist history? I asked. Corrected history, she said. Our parents had called, of course. My father cried. My mother asked 1,000 questions she should have asked years earlier. We were not fixed, but for the first time, we were at least honest. Daniel became a mentor after the deal. Every so often, he would say the same thing over coffee. Stop hiding. You built something incredible. Let people see it. Eventually, I listened. I accepted conference invitations. I did the magazine profiles. I let my story become visible. And when people asked why I had stayed quiet for so long, I told them the truth. Success does not require an audience. But there is a particular kind of freedom in being fully seen by the very people who once mistook your silence for smallness. My family thought Easter brunch was too sophisticated for me. They thought finance people were above my understanding. They thought I needed to be shielded from rooms I built for a living. They were wrong, not because I argued, not because I demanded recognition, but because I built something too undeniable to dismiss. And the look on Ethan's face when he walked into my office that Tuesday morning, that was worth every quiet year I spent building in the shadows.